Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Net Echoes podcast. I'm Nate, and this is a podcast where I talk about something that is on my mind. I pick a question or a topic that I've heard or something that inspires me, echo it back to you in hopes to encourage or inspire you. Interesting questions inspire people, so let's see what happens. This is episode 017, Cold Showers. Well, I am excited to be back. It is September, and I basically took the summer off, back and forth, everything like that. With kids, schedules were crazy. I didn't have a consistent time to really do anything. And so I'm excited to be back. My boys are back in school now, and it's just been exciting for me. And so I wanted to kick off this. I don't know if this is season two. I'm looking over to somebody else, like somebody else is here. They're not. If you're listening to this on any podcast app, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, just to let you know, I started recording myself and throwing it on YouTube. So what up? If you're watching this on YouTube, how's it going? Thanks for joining me. Let me know anything that I can do that maybe help your viewing experience or anything like that. It'll be pretty cool. But today I was going through and I wanted to talk about something that I kind of been thinking about over the last couple weeks. Well, really over the last summer, right? And it's this idea of tough things. I read a book a while back called "Do Tough Things" or "Do Hard Things." I forget what the title actually is. It's one of those two. But it was written by two teenagers, and they were talking about just doing things that are hard, doing things that are tough. And this summer, I've really tried to get into that mindset of like, why should we do tough things? What's the benefit that we get out of doing difficult things? And I think for a lot of this, everybody's got different reasons for why or why not, or what they should do, what difficult is, right? Um, and I got to thinking about this time when this is probably about 7, 8 years ago. A friend of ours, he loved hiking the Appalachian Trail. Jack Davis, shout out Jack if you're listening to this. But one of his favorite things to do is hike the Appalachian Trail. And his goal is to hike from Maine all the way down to, I think it's Georgia, 1,200 miles of the Appalachian Trail. And so he'll take sections of 10 miles and hike that in a week, or 5 days, 8 days, maybe 20, or not 10 miles, sections of 100 miles. Right, he'll do about 10 miles a day, and try to get throughout the rest of his life. He wants to be able to complete that. It's a goal, and it's awesome. And why it's difficult is, first of all, it's not just something that can be done once, right? He's not just blocking off a weekend and being like, I'm going to do this thing. It's really inspiring, because it is something that's really tough. And so he every year he gets some people together, and they go out on the trail, and they get trail names, and his son-in-law Adam is with them. And one year, I decided to go, and he getting some people together for this, and we go out on this Appalachian Trail hike. Plan on about, I think it was about 8 days, that we were planning on doing this Appalachian Trail hike. I went, my brother went, my dad went, my brother's friend Josh went. There was probably about 12 of us, something like that. And what we did is we drove all the way up to, I think it was Maine. We were doing one of the 100-mile treks up there, and we everybody got ready as prepared as they could. Right, we live in Ohio, and there's just nothing around. We tried doing the stair climber. We run stadium seats, and everything like that to kind of figure out how can we prepare ourselves for what's going on. And this we ended up doing it, and my dad, Jack, told us, he's like, this is going to be hard, like this is going to be tough. And my dad went over there, and he got out there, and I'll never forget what he said, because it ended up, he wasn't able to do it. He had a CPAP machine and just couldn't get to sleep and everything like that, and we ended up hiking back out, not finishing that. And it was interesting. It was a great learning experience for me, because of what my dad said. And here's what he said. He looked at Jack at one point. He's like, what you say is hard and what I say is hard are two different things, right? And I was like, "Man, that is so good," because what you might think is difficult, I might think is easy. What you might think is easy, I might think is difficult. What a difficult thing for me is reading, right? I'm a slow reader, and so to read a lot of books over a course of a year or a course of a few different months, man, that becomes really difficult for me because I am a slow reader. In order to retain the things that I'm hearing, I have to read slowly. And so this idea of doing hard things or doing tough things really jumped out at me. And I've been reading some books, and I've been reading some leadership books and things like that. And one of the books that I've found, I was like, okay, I just want to do some tough things. I just want to do some difficult things, things that aren't easy for anybody or for me especially. And one of the things that I started looking into were cold showers. I don't know if you've ever taken a cold shower, right? You probably have if you were like stuck at a camp somewhere, or you did it as a last resort, that the water just wouldn't warm up and the time's running out, whatever it is. But choosing to take a cold shower is something that is tough. My mindset whenever like if you've never done it before, I challenge you, I dare you, and I want you to comment. I want you to leave a comment down below, like what was your experience, because it is dreadful. I was talking about it with some guys at my core group this morning, and I mean, you just can't be prepared for what you're going to walk into. Don't start out with it warm and then slowly get it cooler and cooler. Just cold shower right off the front, walk in, and it takes your breath away, right? It is just like, oh my goodness. And you have to try to control your breathing, and you have to try to calm down. And there's a ton of health benefits, and I don't even know them all. Feel free to comment. If you've done any research on this, I'd love to hear some of the health benefits. I just know there's a bunch. But taking these cold showers is something that it's a mind over matter thing. It's something that causes temporary discomfort, right? But it's something that ultimately leads to a greater good, right? It's something that ultimately it's going to help you in those times, in those situations, to make it to make your mind do something that it's telling you not to do, even though you know it's good for you. And I think that's a lot of times where we fail in our life is we fail by not doing the things that we know are good for us because we get comfortable in our routine. We get comfortable in, I just, things are happening to me as opposed to happening to things. My schedule is happening to me. It's being dictated what time am allotting for everything else, whether it be work, family, sports, kids, school, whatever it might be. That's getting dictated to me rather than saying, you know what, I'm going to take control of my schedule. I'm going to do the things that I want to do. I also have to do the things I need to do, but there are definitely things that are there are definitely more things within my control than are outside of my control. And a lot of times, what I do is I end up letting these difficult things just kind of be, well, these are my excuses. It's difficult. It's really difficult. And I've never found that more true than in my relationships with my family, within the relationships with my wife. And that there are some things that I can do that I know that I can do that'll make her excited, that'll make her happy, that'll make her, just put her in a better mood, right? Just put her in a better mood for the day. There are those things that I can do, and I say, well, I've been busy, I'm tired, I need some me time, everything like that. One of and I end up not doing it, not because I don't want to, not because I don't have the time. I make excuses that I don't have time, but it's just because they're hard. It's just because they're difficult. And what are those things that are difficult that can really help us? In my core group this morning, when we were kind of talking about this, we started talking about this idea of looking at our life with a positive attitude, looking at our life instead of saying, okay, this is happening to me. How can I happen to things, right? How can I happen to my schedule? How can I happen to my employees or my employers, the people that I encounter? How can I take control of my day rather than my day taking control of me? And we started talking about this idea of everything. God has a purpose for everything, or God can be God works out all things for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose, right? And we're reading this book right now. One of the things in the book, it talks about, and the Lord prepares a meal for you in the presence of your enemies. This 23rd Psalm, this idea of, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. This is so good. Look at all of these things. But we started talking about the idea of these things, this good thing happening, and God prepares a place for you in the presence of your enemies. These enemies aren't going away. And a lot of times we think of enemies as these people in our lives, and sometimes it is those people in our lives. But what about the enemies that aren't people in our life? What about the things that we're never going to overcome because they're always going to be a presence in our life? Things like, inadequacy, things like, I wonder if I'm going to be a good enough father. I wonder if I'm going to be a good enough spouse. I wonder if I'm going to be able to provide and take care of my family and friends if I lose my job, or if this happens, or if my kid gets this diagnosis and needs special help the rest of his life. What happens if my kids never move out of the house? I had plans for an empty nest. I talked with somebody last night, on Wednesday, and they were like, "Oh my goodness, their youngest just left for college," and she's like, "We really like empty nesters. Like, we really like not having to check with anybody, that we're doing stuff." And I said, "Man, I can't wait for that time." But like, what happens if my enemy, the difficult thing is my kids don't move out of the house? What happens if my plans get changed, not by anything, not by any help or anything that I have any control over? And I think it's this idea of that mind over matter, that, okay, in the presence of your enemy, God is preparing that table before you. God is still with you in the difficult times, not in spite of the difficult times. It'd be really easy for us to be like, well, listen, everything's going well and I'm going to do good, right? Everything's going well and I'm going to have mind over matter because my mind is in a good place, right? But when that matter starts to really be terrible, when the things that you're going through are tough and sticky and nasty and sweaty and smelly, and you just want to stop and give up, how are you actually taking those things on in your life? And these ideas of cold showers, that's the idea, is by putting yourself in these situations, in these stressful situations, in these life or death situations. What you're able to do is you're training your brain, you're training your mind, you're training your body, you're training everything, your emotions, to say, I've been in a similar situation like this before. Is taking cold showers the same thing as getting told you have cancer, your loved one's about to die, or there's this diagnosis, or you're getting laid off? No, 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 no. I'm not trying to equate those two things as equal. But what I am trying to do is, so many times when we have these difficult things that we're trying to do, or these difficult things that we know are going to happen in our life, we don't train or prepare for any of them. We just sit there and say, things are good and I want to keep them good. What would happen if we acted upon our schedule? What would happen if we went after it and in the good times started, kneecapping ourselves, started handicapping ourselves to say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I thought about this whenever my boys, they absolutely loved love playing the game of croquet. My wife's family is huge into croquet, so we got a croquet set for the house, and they didn't know how to play very much, but they weren't allowed to play with the adults. And so they take it seriously. It's really awesome. I've got a actual croquet. Anyways, talk to me about croquet if you want. But we've got this idea that, or they had this idea that they wanted to be able to learn. And I went out the very first time that we played croquet with my boys, and I showed them how to play. And I was really good for them. They had never played. They didn't know what was going on. And I got them out real quick. It wasn't even a fun game, or I could have. And what I ended up doing, I got through the first two, and I went, if I want to encourage them to play, I've got to handicap myself. I've got to try to play with my left hand, as opposed to just loafing, right? As opposed to just hitting the ball, and I know I could get back around at any point. If you don't know croquet, none of these references make any difference to you. But what I did is I thought, how can I make myself better? And so I started playing with my non-dominant hand, right? And you could do this in sports and basketball and baseball. You could do this however you want, and you kind of start handicapping yourself, not to make them feel better about themselves, but to make you better. Like, I'm getting better during this artificial handicap that I'm giving myself, right? What is a way that we can start challenging ourselves in ways that we know we're going to be tested at in the future? We know things aren't always going to be rosy. Those are the things that I want to do. When you're parenting and things are going well, how can you start working on attitude or conversation skills? Whatever we're talking about, because you get flustered, right? You get flustered. How can you work those things out when you get flustered, or when things aren't going well? A lot of times I think about, okay, I'm a person that I personally don't like babies, right? I just really don't. Um, my wife loves them. That's great. They're just tiny, weird looking humans. There's never been a cute baby whatsoever. They're just all, and I don't get that cuddly thing. Like, okay, that's cool. I can do it. I understand the process of it, but I don't get it. And I always want the more fun times. And I have a tendency to think, especially in parenting, that the most difficult times are behind me. But if we're really being honest, and the people that I've talked with, the people that I've engaged with, they've all said, especially the people who have kids older than I am, the older they get, the more difficult they get. The older you get, the more you're playing for keeps, right? The more difficult of the situations, everything is magnified as they continue to get older. And I sat there and went, what if the most difficult years of my parenting life aren't behind me, which I thought they were with infants? What if the most difficult years of my parenting life are ahead of me? Well, if that's the case, I'm going to start training now to be a better parent. I'm going to start training now to have a better relationship with my kids, to where when those tough times come, I'm going to be a better parent in that situation. And yeah, things are still going to surprise me. Things are still going to catch me off guard. I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, I'm going to be excellent. I'm going to be great." But what I am saying is, I want to be as prepared as I can be. What if you were told the next 5 years is going to be the most difficult 5 years of your life? Or better yet, what if you were told in 5 years from today, today's September 17th, 2021, September 17th, 2025 is going to be the most difficult year of your life. That's when the most difficult year of your life is going to start. You don't necessarily know what, you don't necessarily know how. What would you do differently if you knew that? I mean, I'd probably start preparing and training and getting the good times in and figuring out, why is it going to be difficult? Why don't we go ahead and do that now? We know we're going to have difficult lives the rest of our life. I mean, Jesus talks about it. You will always have these people among you who he's going to prepare a table for you in the presence of your enemies. Your enemies are always going to be there, whether it's doubt, fear, Jeff from down the street, your neighbor, your parents, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, whoever it might be. You are going to have these enemies in your life the rest of your life. Why not start preparing for it now? Well, hey guys, I really appreciate you joining me today. I'll be back to a regular schedule where I'm releasing these on Fridays. Please, I'd love it if you comment, like, share. I'm an extrovert. I like getting comments. I like getting feedback. If there's something that I can do to help you out, sound quality, anything like that, let me know. But I'd also love to hear, what are some tough things that you're doing? What are some things that you're doing, maybe some difficult years that you've had in your life, and how you prepared for it, or how you would have prepared different if you would have known, right? Hey, I appreciate you. Make today great.